unraveling at the edges, but I don't care because, again, that's in the, it's going to be taken care of by the lining. If it sticks out, I'll trim it off, but I'm not going to go around and trim it now. I think the more often you trim it, the more it ravels. Great. You can do this in one long strip, or you can, here with the corners, if you have these, the corners you could cut and do in small pieces. I'm going to do it that far. Then I'll reverse the vestment. I like to work on this side. So now I'm going to take the iron, and because of paper, I can press on top of that. And as you press it, you can see actually where you pressed it, because the paper sort of sticks to it. It turns clearer. And again, because I'm using the 1/4 inch, if I go off it in some of these places, it's still within the seam allowance where the trim is going to cover it. And because it's velvet, you will see it move with the nap. And that's the problem with velvet, besides the fact that you can't press it properly. You done? Oh, good. Thank you.
Where do you want it? Can you record?
Now, I'm going to have to clip the curve here a little bit. I don't think I'll have to clip further than that. These lower curves I could clip, or I can just do what I'm doing, which is put pleats in it. Smart person that I am. Okay, I'm going to take the paper off. Clip the curve here and then finger press it down first. These lower curves that curve in, don't really have to clip them, which will get her places that look like you need a pleat. Okay, I'm going to do this half with the iron and then turn it around. Normally I wouldn't turn it around, but I have this camera thing here, so I would just move myself around the table. Once you move it, you gotta make sure everything's flat again, but pinning it really well will help with that. Okay. That needs to go. I'm going to start up where the other one left off and finger press it to the velvet. If your edge is really frayed, just ignore it and press it to the main part of the fabric that isn't frayed. Now I've moved this velvet around dozens of times, because this is one I've been working on for a long time, on and off, whenever I get a vacation or a chance. And so in between times it has to get folded up, put away, and so it's constantly being folded and unfolded, but the edges are not that frayed. Paper with the iron to glue it down. It's a little wide here. It'll be okay. Alright. Take off paper. Something I often forget to do. You don't take the paper off, you press it, and then you wonder why it's not sticking. But there's no harm done, because you just press it again, take the paper off and press it again. Okay. All right, now to join the shoulders, I'll pull this up so you can see it a little better. I think it's in the, I've joined right sides together the velvet. The interlining on either side I am not concerned with. It's not, I'm just joining the two velvet pieces. All the linings and interlinings are all out of the way. This, I'm going to sew this. The same with this. It would be nice if when I'm finished the two interlinings butt up each other, against each other underneath the edge, but if it doesn't matter. They're inside, they're completely confined by the lining and the main fabric, and they won't shift. So I'm going to sew these two together, these seams, and then I'll turn it over and do the same thing with the lining. Okay, once you've sewn the outside together, now you want to sew the lining together. And again, you could do this with sewing both parts of the front together first and then both parts of the lining and then putting the lining to it. Make sure you cut your lining out using the pieces before you sew it together, but then afterwards you could do it that way. I don't, because so often I find that if you did it that way, I'd leave yourself extra seam allowance around the sides, not at the ends. At the ends, the seam, both pieces are cut exactly the same. There's no seam allowance on the shoulder cross piece because that was already made with the seam allowance when you cut it originally, because you knew you were going to sew those together. Unlike the chest style vestment where it gets stuck into a pocket, you don't need it. So now I'm attaching the two, pinning the two lining pieces together. When you sew the velvet, you need to sew it with a walking foot or a roller foot, and it will still shift anyway. So very slowly and watch it, because the higher the nap, the more it will want to shift. If you have an 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch nap, it'll want to shift that much in whatever the direction the nap runs. And usually you're going cross nap at the shoulders, so by all means. Leave yourself, move very slowly and sew it very slowly and watch it. Alright, so pinned this shoulder piece. Now the right, again, it's right sides together. The right side is the bottom side of the vestment. So that would be your seam across there. And again, there's room to do that in here because I didn't sew the top part. I'm going to pin this. I have the shoulders, the velvet pin. I'll take those pins out. And now I want to, now this is the right side. This is the side that will show, so it's going to be this side with this side, and they join like that. Make sure you get the next side on the next side, and you have room. You can work from the inside here because you have none of this sewn here. None, I mean the lining isn't. That's the right side, and this is the right side. I mentioned on the video when I was talking about interlining, and then I got sidetracked with cleaning vestments, that you should not use Pellon. Pellon is a paper product, and whether you wash it or dry clean it or do nothing to it at all, it being a paper product deteriorates, and kind of pills up in there. It gets little, it wads, it shifts, and like you know, over time it will make creases in there, which will come through to the other side to your main fabric. There's not much you can do about it except to take the whole thing apart and put in a new interlining. So don't use Pellon. That kind of thing is fine in a collar but when you have a whole vestment, I wouldn't use it. Okay, so I'm going to sew that and the other side. Okay, I've sewn it together. I pressed the lining flat. I didn't press the velvet. It pretty much does it on it. It'll stay by itself. I've lined up the edges on the outside edges so that I can turn it and get it ready for the trim. Now see, this is why I do it this way. See, it doesn't want to lay flat. It's all pulled up at the neck, and it's very hard to do it. But by having the bottom already done, I only have to worry about this area from here to here. And so that's what I'm going to do now. Do it the same way as I did with the other edges. I'm going to use the steam seam. A little bit of interlining sticking out here. I'm going to cut off. I'm going to put my pins back in this, the ones I took out, in order to match up the shoulders, because I'm going to flip it around to do the other side. you can press the shoulder seam open, or you can press it to one side. I pressed it to one side. And again, I'm not worried about the neck yet. I just want the inner linings at the edges and everything at the edges to be nice. See how this is the inner lining? I undid the pin so it's flopping around. Pin it in from the edge so I can work at the edge. See how the edge does not want to stay flat. Okay, that'll be okay. All right. All excess lining here. Now, would you have to do it this way if it weren't velvet? And by that I mean the shoulders seam this way. I still would do it that way, because again, you still have this problem of it not wanting to lay flat. But if you're a good seamstress, which I never claim to be, I'm self-taught, and most of what I learned about vestments I learned from taking them apart. Did I learn to do this by taking a vestment apart? No, I just do this because I've tried the other ways and I didn't like how it turned out. So, but you might be better at it than I am. I tried this on a Gothic once, doing it this way, the shoulder seams, and I don't recommend that. It's just too much fabric to work with. I thought it might help in the lay of the vestment, and it didn't. It didn't make any difference whatsoever. I mean, it just ended up being harder. So, As I say, I'm a lazy person. I look for the easiest way to do something. Again, because of the stickiness of this this tape, you have to be careful that the lining doesn't grab it before you've decided, you know, where, like there it just grabbed it because I was working over here and it's laying on top of it and it just grabbed it. Fortunately, it's grabbing it where I want it to go, but sometimes it doesn't. These curves, because they turn out, have to be clipped a little bit. This is not something I teach in the seminar, because we don't do this type of vestment in the seminar. But I thought I would add this because you do get both patterns, and sooner or later you might want to make the other vestment, or the priest might ask you to make the other vestment. And you'll wonder, well, do I do it the same way? Yes, basically the same way, but with a few, like this, like a few little modifications. Okay. Now, the neck. I'm trimming around here where the seams are because there's extra fabric. You want them to meet nicely, and they didn't. And I probably will have the same thing on the other side because of the cutting that I did to it. When I cut it out, you leave the seam allowance, and sometimes, and when you turn it over, you have that seam allowance sticking out. So you have to trim it off. And I lost my scissors. Here they are. Okay, so what I'm going to do is do this side first. This is the bottom, and this will all have to be clipped. I'm going to shift it here a little bit. It's kind of narrow there, but it's not too narrow. Again, that's why you cut more, you give it more seam allowance than you need, so that when it shifts, you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Now, in this area here, it's gonna be tricky to do it with the iron. I think what I'm just gonna do is peel the paper off. Stick it down and then hit it with the iron. Could do it with the glue here. They have those little irons, tiny irons, and I have one of those, but they're not steam. They made a really small steam iron, and they may do that. I'll have to check into that. But I don't often make a shoulder one like this. I don't because they're a pain in the neck. Why did I make it this way? Well, because of the design that I wanted on it on the front wasn't really conducive. The shorter one wasn't really a good match for that. So, and okay. Come on. Steam. Okay. Now, I'm going to put the trim on the same way but the trim that I'm using is a heavy gold metallic, the same as this, and it can't be put on with either stitch retreat or steam and seam because it's just too thick. I could try it, but it's pretty, like this one I had to put down with glue, and I will probably have to do that with this as well. So now I'll go around and trim all the seam back, the lining fabric back, all the way around, and then I will glue down my trim on top of that, just like I did with the front. I'll be able to run it all the way around the whole vestment, and then all the way around the neck, over the shoulders. I would probably start it at one shoulder, so it's not noticeable, and end it back at the same place. With this, because this is so thick, and the ends ravel so badly, I will probably come underneath it, but again, the glue will keep it from unraveling wherever I start it. So now I'm going to trim it down and put that on it, and then this is finished. Nice thing about this trim is it's woven in such, and it goes around corners without making pleats. It just eases around corners. Because if I had to pleat this, it would just be impossible. It's too, where I had to do it on here, you have to fold it over on top of itself. I just thought I'd show you this process. I was going to, but there's nothing to it. You just put glue down, use a straw, put it on top of your lining edge, and put the trim on top of it. The thing with this glue is it's like airplane glue, model glue. It has, likes to stick to itself. But using a straw, you can control how much, or a toothpick. This is a stirrer, coffee stirrer. You can control exactly how much you put down. Or if you tried to squeeze it out, it would go really thick in some places and then nothing at all in others. And where it was thick, it would tend to come out from underneath the trim. But I like it too because it dries very quickly. This is already dried here. Where the white glue, the white fabric glue, Unique Stitch, Aleene's fabric glue, those types are very watery and they dry very slowly. I started using this a long time ago when I was in Mexico and making dolls to sell. I worked for an orphanage there and we made dolls. And making their shoes, because you need something that dried very quickly. So you could attach the upper to the lower and have it, and not have to hold it for a long time while it's shifted out of place. And okay, and that's the process. you only put a little bit of glue on the out because, as I say, it dries quickly, and so does what you have here on the plate, or in this case the cardboard, dries quickly too. So you only have a very short working time, and then you need to squeeze out some more.